That, number one, amazing. I mean, beyond amazing. And I let you keep running with it because there was like 15 things I wanted to stop you on, but
Yeah.
I'm so enamored with the concept. And let me be clear, from a personal perspective, anything that reduces this country's or anyone's needs on opioids is a net positive. The drug crises and the mental health crises that are facing the entire planet is much larger than than most people understand and think of. And so if you're saying that by putting this on, you can reduce any percentage of people that are seeking to relieve chronic pain or chronic illness or anything along those lines, and give them a choice of this or a pharmaceutical drug, massive win. And I really applaud you for the thinking, the thought process, and everything else along those lines. When you kind of approach doctors or kind of the clients that then give this to the patients, what's kind of their first feedback or their questions, or like, are they just amazed and do they buy in immediately, or are they kind of very skeptical about this?
Yeah, healthcare is laden with skepticism, and that's a really good, healthy thing for that industry. If we adopted anything that had some semblance of hope, we would be disillusioned a lot of the time, and there's major safety and ethical implications, especially for higher risk things. But upon explaining, one, that we're based in these evidence-based approaches, most people don't realize that 20, 30 years of research just behind VR and how we're not really recreating the wheel. So the things that I'm talking about that are changing behavior around diaphragmatic breathing, cognitive behavioral therapy, relaxation, and pain education, all those things could be done outside of VR. But generally they're not. And they're not for a number of different reasons. So first and foremost is for every 10 to 30,000 patients, there's only one trained specialist for pain. And so there just isn't enough supply of professionals. And because of the pandemic, some health systems have experienced a 20% dropout in terms of their nursing and physician staffs because of how hard it is to be a clinician, how hard it is to become a nurse in today's market. And so we're seeing a huge gap of care. Two is a lot of mental health and behavioral health is highly stigmatized. It's the idea of actually seeking care and going down and sitting with a therapist and divulging your vulnerabilities is a really challenging thing for most people to do. And then lastly, mental health in particular and behavioral health is very poorly reimbursed too. And so you also have barriers for actually who pays for it and how it gets paid for, because a lot of mental health is out of pocket and not everyone can afford to do that. And so a big part of our positioning isn't even around virtual reality and how it can create a more effective experience that's more engaging, with better retention, with better durability, which is all 100% true. But we really lean into those gaps in care because that's another epidemic that people aren't talking about. And ultimately, in order to provide care to an increasingly impacted group of people suffering from pain, suffering from mental health, suffering from behavioral health, we need to think differently about the delivery of healthcare. We need to go beyond the walls of a clinic or even the telehealth model, which has done a great job at creating bridges to connect patients and doctors together. But if you don't have trained practitioners on the other end of it, what good is telehealth? Who are you going to connect a person to? And so in the world of the types of therapies that we're developing, they're completely self-administered in the home on demand for the patient. And so it's under the supervision of a doctor. It requires a prescription.
They're in VR with the person?
Nope, there's no person. It's an
Okay.
entirely self-guided experience.
Okay.
In those modules I talked about, they power it on, they put on a headset, and they go through these immersive experiences that sometimes feel like games or feel like interactive meditation experiences. And while it's under the supervision of a doctor who we provide the data to and who prescribes this to their patient, it doesn't actually require a human to be able to get the therapy. And that really is a paradigm shifting approach into the delivery of healthcare. And so as we get into it, I'd say doctors, patients, and even insurance providers are very intrigued and interested. And upon trying this, it's really quick to see the benefits, particularly when a doctor sees their patient of how responsive they are. And even when they say, well, my 65-year-old, I don't know how receptive they are to technology. And that's a myth that's been dispelled a lot of times. In fact, older people often have been more receptive they have a little less jaded expectations of what technology is and what content looks like. And so we've actually found older patients to even be more engaged in many cases than younger patients. But the biggest challenge that we have in healthcare is healthcare services and products are largely paid for by health insurance companies. And payers historically have been very slow to adopt new technologies and their willingness to pay for new things. And so a big part of our business, while the doctors and patients are largely on board and excited to get this into the hands of their patients, we've been working very closely with the government and health insurance companies to drive this at scale adoption, because we can provide this to a group of people who are willing to pay cash and willing to get the services now. But at the same time, we're doing this because we want to make impact on a massive societal problem, which is chronic pain. And in order for this to be adopted and treated like any other medical device or drug, it needs to get paid for with a similar mechanism, which is insurance companies need to cover this for their patients. And so that's our biggest journey that we're on after 8 years going through the FDA approval process and getting our authorization. Now the mission is reimbursement at scale. And so we've been working with health systems like the VA, big private payers, and looking at the government as well as necessary next steps in order to get this in the hands and for this actually to be a part of the mainstream medicine that we think it can be.
I can tell you right now, as a bunch of YPO members and business minded entrepreneurs around the world are watching this, their minds are racing onto, well, this should be in every nursing home that exists. This should be in every retirement community. That the great thing about this is it scales. You could go to Zuckerberg and buy 10 million of these things, and you'd be his new best friend. Ship them all over the place, and there's no net negative. There's no like, you spent an extra hour in here, you're a little too much. The concepts of the drugs are highly addictive. If you take them with the wrong in the wrong way, too much, or mix them with the wrong thing, they're very volatile. And so the fact that you're getting 30+% reduction, more than that, 40% reduction in pain through a trial system right now, with a completely non-addictive immersive experience. And you're not, I won't call you a startup, but you're far from your full potential of scaling this thing and doing what you guys are doing. It's a really intriguing concept. And I'm really excited to kind of hear and continue to watch where this thing goes. I love that most of the doctors aren't skeptical, and I do agree that the older people are much more wowed by this. My dad, we gave him one a couple of years ago, and he just sits on the Star Trek Enterprise bridge and plays that one game, and he's amazed by it. He loves it. There's nothing more that they really need, but I appreciate the fact that it's something that almost anyone can pick up, charge it, power it on, and it works.